Hi, I'm Karen Ashwin. I'm the CEO of the event production company. And today I have with me Miguel Duarte and Garth Braithwaite. We are discussing the topic of cybersecurity. Now, what they tell me is we can talk about cybersecurity for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. So this discussion is going to probably be in two parts. So enjoy, and I'm going to ask Miguel the first question. Miguel, what is your overview of cybersecurity? Give us an indication of what is cybersecurity.
Hi, Karen. Thank you for having me today. Cybersecurity is basically a domain within the IT domain, which focuses on protecting confidentiality, integrity, and availability of systems for organizations and people. So basically, this is called the triad within information security or cybersecurity, and all our work is focused around these three elements. So we need to make sure that the data doesn't get disclosed. Unauthorized disclosure is important, so we need to stop that from happening. Integrity, we need to make sure that data doesn't get amended or altered in any way, so that when people get data from you, they can trust it. And the last thing is availability. So services need to be available for customers. So people like Amazon, when people want to buy from them, their service needs to be available 24/7. So we work on all these three key dimensions to make sure that services are available, that the integrity of the data is available as well, and the confidentiality is also there. So cybersecurity has lots of different layers. It starts with the personal layer where your personal data is at risk, your contact list, your photos, your documents. Then it moves into companies where organizational data is at risk. And then it goes up until the government level where you've got government data at risk, where cyber warfare takes place. I think that wraps it up in terms of what cybersecurity is. There's lots of technologies that support it, but that's the basic concept around cybersecurity. So, and it's become a really big focus now across the pandemic, and in the last 5 years, people have started paying a lot more attention to it.
So the overall impact of obviously this increase in cyber attacks across the world it's increased tremendously. I mean, you're always getting these emails, watch out for, being fraud or whatever the case might be. So just give us a little bit more about the overall impact that it's had on companies or businesses from a small company right up to a large company.
So I think what happens across the board, I think probably about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, a lot of companies started having breaches. So typically people have breaches related to data leaks. So data is leaked outside, so people access the data and then they expose it online. There's no real value to it, and then people lose their reputational value in terms of security. Then you've got other companies that do payment card processing, for example. Those are a little bit more interesting. So there you lose your reputation if you lose the data, and you lose financially, because that data, as a payment card processing company, if you lose your data, you're liable for lots of fines. So that you get both reputational and financial damages. And a lot of the government entities, a lot of it's related to reputational damage. And there's also critical damage to critical infrastructure, which could be power utilities or telecoms, that get brought down for a whole region or part of a country. So, the impact can be detrimental or it can be negligible depending on how the hackers tend to use the data. So it depends on the intention. Sometimes it's a young kid that's just trying to prove himself. Other times it's a cyber strike that's been funded by a government. Other times it's corporate espionage that's funded by one competition to catch up with another company. So It really depends on what the intention is behind the breach. So it could have different effects.
So, now we can all pay on our phones. I mean, like here, your Apple Watch, do your payments on your Apple Watch. I mean, is that a high risk or is that very secure?
Well, Apple is known for providing very good quality software and good remediation on their vulnerabilities very quickly. It goes through PCI compliance typically, so any of these payment wallets have to do PCI compliance. They also do EMV compliance as well. And with these big multinationals, they're fairly secure to be used. I think you've got the Samsung Pay, you've got the Apple Pay, and these are fairly big companies supporting them. And to my knowledge, I haven't seen any breaches around that technology at the moment, so it's fairly secure. But using any of these technologies, you always need to be mindful of what you're doing. And but my view is it's fairly secure, but because there's not been any breaches at the moment. But in reality, everything is breachable. Where there's a will, there's a way, and that's what keeps our jobs going. So breaches happen, and we keep working on them to try and resolve them. I think that's how it works.
So I want to ask Garth, his company has a saying that what you can't secure what you can't see. And I'm like, well, Garth, what does that actually mean? It's cyber. How can I see it? So help me understand this.
Sure. Hi, Karen. Well, thanks for having me on your program. I think what is essential and what has grown over time is a lot of people don't actually understand the data that's flowing across their networks. Networks have evolved over time. They've continued to grow in scale. And we're at a point now where literally everything is running across our networks, whether it be in data centers, whether it be in our homes, whether it be in enterprises or small businesses. What we're seeing is this continual and never-ending flow of data. Now, in the past, with the lower volumes of data, it's been you've had a better handle of what you've been able to see in terms of how the network tools are enabling you to see the flow of data through the traffic. As it grows, and as we've seen in the last couple of months, we've seen the data move from inside the network to outside the network, coming into the network. How do you actually see what's going on the network? So it's key that you start to understand the traffic flows, the types of traffics, the various types of applications. And as you know, if we get back to Apple and Samsung with all these guys, all the applications that are running, those are applications that we as users use. But you got to look at the applications that the enterprise and all the other businesses are running. How do you protect and look at those ones? So it's important to understand the flow of traffic through your network. Now, in the past, you normally have what we call north-south traffic, which means the traffic flowing in and out of your network. Now what we're seeing is traffic flowing east-west, which typically means traffic flowing between servers, between applications. And how do you manage that? How do you understand what's happening in those applications? How do you secure that? Because if you have a vulnerability and somebody manages or an entity manages to slip in some kind of vulnerability into an application, then you never get to see what's going on within your own network and how that's extracting. So it's really important to know what's going in your network, what's coming out of your network, and what's running through your network. So that's really what we look at doing.
So, Miguel, what is your opinion on that? Because obviously now you're seeing all this information flowing, but now we need to remove the risks. So how do you mitigate those kind of risks?
I think data in motion has become a very big thing, and there's lots of tools. I think the trick is finding the right tool for the environment and the need. That's all about getting the right tooling. So you get a proper specialist to come in, look at your environment, look at your need, understand exactly where your users are working from. Do you have typical only north-south traffic? Do you have east-west, depending on the size of your business? And then a specialist can look at it and see how to secure it best. I mean, there's a plethora of tools out there in terms of security. The trick is to keep it simple. I think that's always important. And make sure that you get the right value for the tools you buy. So it's an interesting one. I think cybersecurity is a very broad domain, and you need to secure it in multiple layers. The network is one of the key layers which has been exploited for a long time, and those tools are typically more advanced because they've been developed over more time. Application tools are becoming more interesting now as well. But the trick is you need to use multiple tools. You need to train the people. I think people are very important in the cycle. Get the right processes in place and then get the tools. It's not all about the tools. It's about people, processes, and then tools.
Yeah, I think... To Miguel's point, I think simplicity is the key. I think people try and, if you overcomplicate what's running across your network, and that is the real purpose of what I think as people in the industry we try to do, is you try and simplify this because, the more you simplify it, the more you can get to the root of the cause as fast as possible. And that is absolutely key. And it comes down to a couple of fundamentals, as Miguel says. But I think one of the things we tend to overlook quite significantly is the education of the people that are using the network. A lot of emphasis is placed on organizations providing security. But at the end of the day, as users and as individuals, we need to take responsibility for some of that security ourselves. Now, we can get into the various different types of security and how we generate passwords and all those sort of things. But it's too easy people tend to forget that using a simple password is the easiest route for anybody getting into a system, because it's difficult for us to come and generate passwords or whatever it is. Whether it's banking, whether it's getting onto your local store, whether it's eBay or whatever these things are, people tend to go with what they remember. So back to Miguel's point, training of people is key in this element, and it's hugely overlooked. We have to take, as individuals, you've got to take responsibility for a certain levels of security yourself.
So everybody says store everything in the cloud, but I always think to myself, well, how safe is the cloud? Is it safe? I mean, Garth, what is your opinion on that? And then I'll throw it to you, Miguel. You just give us the opinions here.
Yeah, well, my opinion on this one is some of the stuff is actually safer in the cloud than in people's own homes, because of the way they structure the security in the cloud or in their cloud provider. Now, obviously, you want to go with a reputable cloud provider. If you're buying something that's cheap, it's generally it's going to be easier to compromise. So it's a trade-off between what you want, how valuable your data is, and where your perception of that provider. So. Yeah, I have no issue. In the past, I would have had an issue with it, but where we are now and doing the work that we do, we're seeing heightened levels of security. In fact, you see more security in the cloud than you do in some of the other areas because of the overcommitment in terms of making sure it's secure. Because if you can't sell something that's secure, people aren't going to buy that product, and they invest millions and millions of dollars in these cloud providers. So that's my take.
And you, Miguel, what do you say?
I agree with Garth. So basically, what happens is there was a big shift from people having equipment on-prem, which is within their own sites, and moving it into the cloud. So for you to be able to gain that trust, to be able to host that information in the cloud, you need to provide better security and better services. And I think that was one of the challenges when the cloud originally came around. What I've noticed over the past couple of years, maybe a bit longer, is as the cloud started picking up more steam, they started putting in more money into security. And they have teams running 24/7. They have much bigger infrastructure supporting the security, much stronger processes. They've got more investment in the people and in the tools. So they actually provide a lot better security than most small to medium enterprises can afford. As a small business, you don't really have the luxury of being able to have an IT manager and an IT security manager and a security guy. You typically have one guy, and he's like the army of one, and the poor guy has to do everything. So when you put it into the cloud, he's got the backup of, lots of experts, cloud security experts. You've got infrastructure experts. So it offloads a lot of that work into the cloud. So there's obviously a business model you need to look at in terms of, is it efficient and cost-effective for me to go into the cloud? Typically with small and medium businesses, it's a no-brainer. It's where the businesses get bigger and there's thousands of servers, it becomes a little bit more interesting in terms of where you go to the cloud or whether you stay within your own data center. Because there was a couple of use cases a couple of years ago where some big companies rolled out thousands of servers into the cloud, only to find out they were spending like 30 to 40% more money in the cloud than they were if they kept everything on-prem. That's an interesting one. I think the cloud has become a lot more secure. But the password is what secures your account. So if you have a strong password, you're going to be quite secure. If you have a very weak password, no matter what other security they have around it, someone's going to be able to get in there. So the trick is keep strong passwords. And I do think the cloud providers are very secure, especially the premium ones like Google Cloud, Amazon. These guys, Microsoft is doing really well at the moment. They're doing excellent, actually. So yeah, these providers are doing very well on the security front. So I think it's more secure there. Not to take away from all the good work that the people are doing on-prem, but I do think it's a very difficult battle to fight on your own. And I think having the people in the cloud supporting you is a great way to offset the risk and get the security managed.
So a lot of companies that we engage with, often we can't give them USB sticks to input into their computers, etc., etc. Now, with COVID-19, everybody started working at home. Did that, Garth, did that increase the risk? I mean, from your analysis of data, was there a bigger risk that started to emerge over the last few months because of this?
Well, I think, yeah, naturally it's going to happen. You're going to see a huge risk, and it actually comes down to a whole lot of things. I mean, the USB one was a prime example of how a lot of, when we use the word hackers in the early days, got into people's network. They would throw out thumb drives, and people would pick them up, put them in to see what was on the drive. It was a score as far as they're concerned, and boom, that was the network taken over, vulnerabilities all over the place. So yeah, no, but you're seeing that from a work from home kind of environment. The step up that organizations have had to implement, whether it's a VPN, whether it's other secure types of services, obviously with the SSL, secure socket layer, or what we call TLS now, which is the next version of encrypted communications. But what we're finding, even with that, you're seeing that some of these sophisticated again, using the word hackers, are embedding into programs, embedding into emails, utilizing SSL, which is, again, while we move into TLS, vulnerabilities in that. So it is a never-ending task. Your ability to look into security, and this comes from the tool vendors, their ability to look into even secure communications is vital. So again, it comes down to how secure is your network. You're only as secure as the weakest link. What a lot of people don't do, and this is one of the things I have, and it comes down back to the individuals, is well, how secure is your home network? Because if somebody can get into your system through your home network because you don't have a secure enough system, then they're going to gain access to the bigger systems, to the enterprise systems, and that's why people, when we talk about small businesses getting hacked, why it's not important. Well, it is important because those small businesses connect to bigger businesses. So if they get a vulnerability that gets into a small business that may have access to sensitive data in an enterprise, it is like a friend of mine used to say, they spend 24 hours a day looking at ways getting in your network. How much time do you spend trying to keep people out? And we're seeing, to Miguel's point, we're seeing a heightened focus in enterprises and people looking to secure their networks in order to mitigate that kind of risk. So, sorry, Miguel, I kind of got over that.
No, I think that was an excellent answer. I think that wrapped it up quite well. I think that was an excellent answer. It does increase the risk, and you are absolutely right.
So are we seeing that these trends, are they targeting, like you said, there's the small businesses, but, are these hackers then just hacking, or do they actually target specifically large companies, or is it just random? So Miguel, how is this, how do they just find us?
I think they go for the weakest linkers. I think one of the easiest targets is humans and people. So people are susceptible to different forms of social engineering. And that's where this ransomware and phishing attacks is actually very prevalent. Now, the trick there is if they're able to con you or convince you into actually clicking on a link, and then you give them access to your system, or they can actually encrypt your system, then you're done. And I think if you're on a work machine, I think there was a couple of incidents globally where people within the banking environment, smaller banks, not the bigger ones, clicked on a ransomware link and it encrypted their disk. And it started moving from east to west within the network, and it started encrypting lots of different workstations, and the bank ground to a halt. So I think within the working environment, working from home, people are a little bit more relaxed, and hackers are focusing on people. And so they try to get into their personal emails, because sometimes there's a spill of your corporate work into your personal emails. So that's one way to kind of get in. Once they can rope you into clicking on one of the links, and they can control your home computer or your home network, that's when you have access to your enterprise networks, which is what Garth was talking about. So it's a very similar thing in terms of access. They focus on the weaker people, and the weaker link is the person. I think that's the trick there, and that's why there's a lot of focus on awareness now to make people aware of cybersecurity risks, and that it's everybody's responsibility. So there's a value chain, and people are one of the most critical link in the value chain. So people, process, and technology. So we keep focusing on that, and then the people is probably where the highest risk is, and that's why we're investing a lot of time and energy in people at the moment to make sure they stay secure.
So Garth, so in terms of, I mean, there's so much data around in terms of we got the social side, then everybody starts to do business on WhatsApp, and there's too many communication platforms. So if it is the people, that's fine, but we're all doing business on different applications. So from you analyzing the data, is this also something that's a challenge?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for every organization. I mean, if you look at most enterprise organizations, they have up to 100 to 200 different apps running across their network. So they've got to look into those apps and understand what's going on. You've got to start to understand the traffic patterns that typically happen across those applications, and then you've got to start to look for anomalies. And that's essentially what companies are now doing. They're looking beyond the application. They're looking into the metadata of the application. In order to understand exactly how that application functions. They're looking at the types of packets that are running across the network. They analyze those packets to see if there's any anomalies in those packets, whether they're too big, too small. I mean, we could go into the technical element of what they're doing. But it is key. I mean, the applications are driving our economy. They're driving the business. They're driving everything. You get software as a service. You're getting security as a service. You're getting all these types of things. But those typically interact between applications. So you need to secure the transfer of data between those applications. So, look, it's a never-ending task, and it's a difficult one, and it's something that takes a lot of investment. And there's some smart people out there. And getting back to those the cloud providers, these are the guys that have the expertise. These are the guys that have the network operations centers and the security operations centers that can protect those vulnerabilities or look into them and have the sophisticated tools. But getting back to the point of origin. The weakest links are always us as individuals. It's
okay,
and it's crazy. It's crazy to think that, because they can spend millions and millions of dollars on security, but if you don't train your people and you don't make them vigilant in terms of how they're accessing the network, you open yourself up, and all the different devices that are now connecting. You connect your phone, your iPad, all sorts of. We won't even get started on IoT and the impact that can have. I mean, that's the game. We'd be here for days, as I said earlier. But IoT is something that people haven't really thought about. And there will be billions of devices on the network. Now, who's going to protect that? And how do we protect that? And that's an industry that you'll see it growing now. There's all sorts of forums and how they do that and how they protect that. So, your washing machine connects to your network. Like, wow. Now, what happens if somebody breaches your washing machine and implants a ransomware or something malware that jumps onto your network, that gets onto your work PC, that takes over the work PC, that's able to use your VPN hook bang into the enterprise network? I'm not trying to scare you. And
it's when they take over my fridge. They must not take over my fridge.
But the thing is, we can sit and laugh about it, but the reality is I've seen it done.
Wow.
I think Miguel would have, he probably, that's what we do. That's the stuff.
So your thoughts on IoT, Miguel?
Unfortunately, IoT, the nature of the devices, they're very small, and they're not built with security in mind. So they're built to do a very small task and get that job done properly. When they connect to the network, they don't have all these fancy operating systems and software applications that sit on top of it. So protection is limited, so they're going to have to rethink the way they design it. So it's going to be something they have to bake into the design, and I think that hasn't happened. And I think because there's a demand to start integrating all these devices for these smart economies and smart cities, there's going to be this gap to be managed in terms of security. So it's going to be a very interesting challenge. I think they need to start with the design in mind. They need to start with security and start securing the devices at the chip level. I think that's where it should start, but I don't think that's going to happen for a while. So I think there's going to be a gap there, and there's going to be a lot of work for people securing IoT devices. I think it's going to be a booming market. I think our friend Jerome might have to hop onto that one.
I think it's very interesting that you talk about, smart cities, because if that is the future, and we're going to wrap up now on about what we believe the future will look like and how do we make that safe in terms of all our data. Garth, what is your opinion about smart cities making life safe going forward by 2030? What is your opinion?
It's an interesting one, and it is going to happen. It's not a question of if; it's just a question of when. And I think the faster that we get there, the better, the better services that the citizens are going to have available to them. Again, it comes down to the security element, and having worked with some of the guys on these sort of things, they're working really hard in the background to make sure that these services and these smart cities are well secured. Back on the IoT things, they're being very, very wary and very cautious about how they implement that. And you'll see, even where we live here in Dubai, it's certainly you're able to pay for things over your phone and that sort of thing. But there's a greater degree of control over that. And I think it's the migration strategy and the infrastructure and how it's designed, how it's architected in order for us to become a fully functional smart city where you drive around in your car. I don't know, even now in the malls, you drive in the mall, it picks up your license plate. You don't have to pay. You've got certain things, the boom opens. So we're already getting to that point, but those are typically very secure systems at this stage. It's when you open it up to just about everything, people are being located where they are, how it's tracking your phone. And you're seeing it now, even with the COVID-19 tracking systems that have been implemented onto your phone. So you're seeing this evolution and testing of the functions that they want to provide. So look, it's going to happen, and I think it's happening gradually, and I think they're taking the precautions in order to make sure it's effective. So I'm not worried about it. It'll happen, but gradual, small steps.
What are your thoughts, Miguel?
I think it's the future. I think Dubai has made great strides in that area, and I think it's great. I got the privilege to work on some design work in one of my previous roles, and it's phenomenal what they're able to do. The optimization and the services that you can provide to citizens and the security you can provide is amazing. And I think it is the future, and it is just a matter of time. And as we've secured all the other IT systems, we'll learn how to secure those. I think people are a little bit more cautious, as Garth said, and they'll take it slowly and make sure they're secure. And, I think smart cities are the future. And if we stay in Dubai another 10 years, I think we'll be able to see it develop in front of our eyes. I think it'll be awesome.
How wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Miguel. Thanks, Garth. Really appreciate it. And this was really interesting, and I hope to have you back again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much.